Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Region 11's monthly webinar series. My name is Brianna Angaseth, and I am part of the Chapter Relations team at HFMA. To kick off the webinar, we would like to thank our Region 11 sponsors, AmPlus, Commerce Healthcare, Progressive Management Systems, Parallon, Firm, TCF Capital Solutions, Harrison Harris, Extend Healthcare, Access One, HRG, AccuReg, Novus, Mail My Statements, Brault, Premier, Centauri, TrueBridge, Aberdeen Health, Patient Matters, Argos Health, RMC, EnableComp, State, Sherlock, Eide Bailey, Softtech, OVEG International, and VitalWare. Your participation is requested. There will be live Q&A during the webinar, so feel free to put your questions in the Q&A pod. We'll also be utilizing the chat pod to share information and tips during the session. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Terry Meyer, President of the San Diego Imperial Chapter of HFMA.
Thank you, Brianna, and thank you everybody for joining us here today for this session. It is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Beth Conklin from State Collection Service. Beth has over 26 years in credit and collection industry and currently serves as Director, Organizational Training and Development with State Collection Service Incorporated. Prior to that, Beth was the Director, Training and Development at two large debt collection agencies. Beth holds the TSP and CCCO designations, serves on the Education Council for the ACA, as well as she is a certified instructor. Beth has earned the Fred Kirshner Award in March 2013 and 2015, as well as being recognized as the ACA Certified Instructor of the Year for 2012 and 2016. Beth has contributed to multiple magazine articles and was recognized as one of the 32 top collection professionals in the industry. Beth, thank you so much for spending your time with us today, and I am so excited to hear your presentation.
Well, hello everyone out there in the virtual world. Thank you so much, Terry and the HFMA team, for this opportunity to present today. I'm really excited to be here, and hopefully I will be able to share some great tips and suggestions and ideas and just kind of talk about it's been, I think, almost a year to the day actually since the pandemic started, and all of the changes and different things that we had to do as organizations across the healthcare industry to not only protect and help our employees, but also our patients. And so we've got a lot of ground that we're going to cover over the next hour. And so we are going to go ahead and talk about, again, how has your customer service experience changed? And, you know, one thing is it's much different presenting at this conference this year than it was last year, right? I'm used to up to a year ago, presenting face-to-face at conferences, going to meetings, being able to rub elbows with everybody. And it's been quite different, you know, converting employees to work in a remote and virtual environment, dealing with new hires, going remote. And so when you think about it in that aspect, right, we think about how it's changed us and how it's so different for us. But let's think about how different it also is for our patients. They've been affected too, and in some shape or form, some of them have been affected a lot more than we think or that we know. And in some situations, they've been affected a lot more than we have. And so in addition to our customer service experience changing, what are we able to do to help our patients and to help them through this pandemic? Because it's still going on, right? I mean, we're a year in, and things seem to be getting a little bit lifted, and I can maybe, I don't want to jinx us, see the light at the end of the tunnel. But there's still a lot that's going to have to be overcome in order for us to get back to what we thought was normal, right? And, you know, one thing too is, over the last year, I've seen so many organizations and the healthcare industry to continually and quickly adjust and adapt and change through the pandemic, right? In so many different areas of our business. What we need to do and what we've done is we've really worked to stabilize and protect our organizations, our employees, looking at different ways to help with revenue, which became a really big priority during the pandemic, and working through different changes in resources and how do we change and move our folks from working in that on-site office environment to working remote. And again, that pandemic is not quite over. Interesting enough, I have a good friend who lives in Pennsylvania. I'm in Ohio, and we camp together. And she is the vice president of a credit union out in Pittsburgh. And we were talking in October about how we were able to adjust and adapt and get our folks moved to, working from their home offices and working remote. And she said to me, she said, what's very interesting in her world is that they had a office building of approximately 55 customer service reps that actually worked on site, and they handled all the inbound call volume for the credit union. And she said that, when the pandemic started in March and April, they converted all those 55 employees to working remote. And what she said is it's actually worked better for them. So for that credit union, that transition worked better for them, to the point that they're not going to bring those folks back to work in the office. They're going to continue to have that remote experience, and they're going to sell the building to help generate some revenue for their credit union. And I find that interesting because not only does it look, like that's kind of going to start happening, across the country, but what does that do for our patients? What does that do for our clients? And so let's kind of talk about how these things have changed. And even though they've changed, what can we do, and what maybe we have done to help keep that experience positive for our patients? Because let's think about it. For us, it's traumatic, right? Let's think about somebody in your life. We have older folks, right? Parents, grandparents, that maybe we haven't really been able to physically touch or hug or go see if they're like in a nursing home or some kind of senior citizens facility. What about when we take somebody that we love or care about to a hospital or to a facility and we have to wait outside in our cars? We're not allowed in to hold their hand and just be that support system. So what are we doing to help our patients to feel like they are in the same boat as us? And we do acknowledge and recognize that their fears are our fears, and we're all human, and we need to understand and recognize that and pass that along to our patients. And so let's talk about, for me, what does change mean? And for me, I looked at COVID and I thought, well, if I had to think about what COVID stands for and COVID-19 stands for me, these are like the acronym that I came up with as far as how I feel COVID represents myself and the industry, right? So COVID-19, for those of you that may not know, the 19 number comes from the year that the pandemic actually began, which was the very end of 2019, but it really became a serious pandemic in, I think, March, April of 2020. And so for me, when I look back at the industry as a whole and how all of us came together in the industry and really reached out to working with patients and really trying to help them with what they're going through and their experience, I felt, we've got C is compassionate. O is overcome. What did we do to overcome? Virtual collecting. What did we talk about as far as virtual collecting and working virtually, right? When you talk about information, let's talk about the different types of information that we have. Diversity. It's extremely diverse, is it not? When we think about it, just diversity as far as maybe changing our standards as far as our payment plans or the different options that we have for our patients. And then we're going to do this, everybody, one patient at a time, just one patient at a time. And then there's 9 ways to adapt. And so towards the end of the presentation, I'm going to give you some nine little word choices or sentences or ways that we can adapt as we continue to change and roll through the pandemic. Because also keep in mind too, folks, that even though we kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it looks like, I know some states have lifted their mask mandates. I believe the CDC just put out, I read last night that, hey, if you've got 5 folks and they've all been vaccinated, you guys can all hang out together and you're fine. And so, it's not necessarily going to be back how it was in 2019 and early 2020 when this started. So it's going to be a consistent change. And what can we do for that? So let's talk about C for compassionate. And I think this is one of the most critical words and one of the most important changes that we in the industry could have done is become compassionate if you have not been already. And maybe even if you are compassionate, how do you increase that? How do you apply that compassion when still trying to get a job done, right? Assertive, is it still okay? I'm going to say probably not. People are worried about their personal lives. You just like we most likely have our own stressors with respect to, my mom. I'll use her as an example. My mother is 74 years old. She has COPD and emphysema. In Ohio, she could have gotten vaccinated 2 months ago. Has she? No, she hasn't. Why? She's afraid of it. That's her mentality. No matter how my husband and I try to talk through with her, she's just terrified. She's afraid of it. She doesn't want to be vaccinated right now. And so that is a stressor for me, right? Because I am her caretaker and I want her to be vaccinated, but she won't do it. And so when you think about your position and where each and every 28 of you on the call today have somewhere in your life, whether it's an infant, maybe you're pregnant, you're trying to get pregnant, you're not sure about the vaccination, you have senior citizens in your family, or you have somebody that does have a compromised immune system, sometimes our word choices or the way we respond to a patient on the phone could be a trigger that really gets them upset. So we need to be mindful of that. We need to be more compassionate and more empathetic to their situation. When we talk about compassion, and I'm going to talk about a little bit more about, this 30-day follow-up and things like that. I remember when the pandemic first hit, and, there was a lot of discussion and a lot of, revisions, if you will, to changing payment plans, altering payment schedules, allowing patients to skip a payment if they needed to based on their situation. They were furloughed or they got sick and they were quarantined for 14 days and they couldn't work and things like that. And so when we talk about, encouraging the patient to follow up within 30 days, it could be 20 days, it could be 45 days. But the key here is when you're expressing that compassion and stretching out that hand to them is, letting them know that you're here and encourage them to stay in touch with you. I'm going to tell you one thing that I've definitely noticed, especially dealing with training and compliance and working with my clients here at State, is I've seen an increase and I've heard an increase in patients calling back and really staying in touch with our representatives because we've extended that olive branch of compassion. And, because we've been able to connect with them during this pandemic and letting them know that we understand where they're coming from and we're in the same boat. They've been so open with calling back, staying in touch, trying to work through different alternatives and different ways that we can work through their account. And I think that's important. Telling them you understand. And look, I'm not saying every call is easy and it's all sunshine and roses and unicorns, right? And everybody's going to be compassionate and thoughtful. You're going to deal with some very critical calls. Angry patients upset that they're being contacted, whether it be by a statement or whether it be by a phone call because of a balance. And they're not going to understand, do not realize what's going on. It's a pandemic. I've been furloughed. Do not understand that I would pay if I could. And for those of you that know me, when I present face-to-face, I always bring some kind of fun toys or candy or something. So let's just pretend I'm there today. And if I were, you guys would all get a Q-tip. So hopefully you can see this Q-tip in the camera. So let's pretend that I passed it all on to you. And what does this Q-tip represent? This Q-tip represents quit taking it personal. Q-tip, quit taking it personal. And I think that that's important for us to understand. And again, as we extend that olive branch, and as we are working towards being more compassionate to our patients, taking a step back and really just using those active listening skills when we're hearing the patient's concerns and what's going on in their life, whether they were furloughed or they did lose their job, or let's think about it. I've always been a remote employee since I've worked at state, and I traveled a lot, but hey, I've got 2 dogs. And so now that more calls and my seminars and all the presentations I do are now on camera, and I'm in my office, but you can hear my dog if she barks, right? Well, what about those of us that have children? Children haven't been in school. And so your patients are dealing with those types of issues, right? They're dealing with trying to do a job remote, maybe for the first time, trying to adjust to different types of technology, in addition to children and having to do some kind of remote learning, right? Or pets or animals or anything of that nature, those Amazon deliveries and the doorbell rings, right? And so think about all of this and being compassionate. And if you're speaking to the patient that is a little bit disgruntled, you understand. And Q-tip, don't take it personal. They're upset, they're scared, they're frustrated. We need to understand that. And understand too, and it's okay to say to your patients, look, I understand what you're going through. We're dealing with the same thing. We're all going through the same type of situation. I mean, it's not unique, right? It's hitting everybody across the world. And so you want to take a look at that and think about it when you're working through that compassion. And so talking about positive word choices, right? And when you talk about positive word choices, I like to use things such as, let's work together. I understand. Thank you. Thank you for calling back. Thank you for communicating that information to me. We really appreciate you choosing our facility. I always like to use let's, L-E-T''S, because what does that stand for? It stands for let us, right? So let's see what options are available. Let's see what other alternatives we have. Let's see if you qualify for maybe some type of financial assistance or charity. But when you say let's, you're including yourself, right? So you're including yourself in the discussion and in the resolution, and you're offering suggestions in ways that you can help the patient. And so versus saying things like, well, what you need to do or what you should do, well, how about let's see what options are available. Let's see what it is that you can do to get this account resolved. Or, let's see what happened with your insurance billing. Maybe it is a COB issue. Maybe it is, something like that. And so using let's, for me, is very effective as a good positive word choice. Let's work together. I'm a big fan, for those of you that know me, of the feel, felt, found method. So I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the feel, felt, found method, but it's a great way to really incorporate it into your conversations with patients, no matter what the situation is. And it really helps to open up that conversation piece. And so an example would be, I understand how you feel, Terry. I spoke to a patient a few days ago that felt the same way. And what they found was they were able to they were able to contact their insurance company and update the information that they needed, add the baby to their insurance policy in order to get the claim rebuilt. Now, we just talked about distractions when you're working from home. There's my landline. Let me shut that off. Yes, we still have a landline, go figure. But that's an example of the feel, felt, found method. Another example of the feel, felt, found method would be, I understand how you feel, Judy. I spoke to a patient who felt the same way. And, I do apologize that during registration, the incorrect insurance was billed as primary. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get that information updated right now. Do you have just a few moments for me to place you on a brief hold while I update your information? And so it's a great way to empathize and to really help build rapport with that patient. And also when you are talking to folks and you're saying, I'm going to put you on hold for just a brief moment. Do you mind? Do you have a few minutes for me? I'm going to see what I can do to get this taken care of. Just please hold. And when you do that, always make sure that you don't leave the patient on hold for too long, right? And so, well, great, Beth, that's a fantastic idea. We all know that, but what's too long? It's going to depend on your organization. We like to do no longer than 15 seconds in our shop, meaning I'm going to put you on hold, and I'm going to try to check back with you at least every 15 seconds in order to make sure, A, you're still there, and let you know that I appreciate you're still holding, and I'm still looking to get you the right answer. And if you're not able to get them that right answer right then and there, offer to call back. Offer to call that patient back. And then if you are going to call back, try to set a clear defined or clear definitive time when you're going to call back. I'll give you a call back within 24 to 48 hours. And if you still don't have the answer in 24 to 48 hours, call the patient back and just let them know that hey, I know I just talked to you a couple of days ago, Terry. It's been 48 hours. I want to let you know that I'm still working on this claim. I'm still looking into the issue. If you can just give me another day or two, I just wanted you to know I didn't forget. And I know that probably sounds great. Well, that's great, Beth, if you have like unlimited resources and an unlimited amount of employees, right? And I know that for a lot of us, we've lost employees. We've had to reduce our resources. But the key here is that when you're building that report, that patient, and if you're not the one that's going to be, you're not sure you're going to be able to call them back, give them the contact information to check back in 48 hours. So at least they have the information they need to check in and call back and see where that claim is or where the status of their question or concern is. If you're not able to reach out and connect directly with them. Those active listening skills are so important. Sometimes, again, as we're dealing with the pandemic and the stressors in our patients' lives, active listening skills are important. Sometimes they just want to talk to somebody and they just need to get it off their chest, right? This pandemic has caused so much anxiety for so many folks, and we want to be mindful of that by just listening. I like to kind of repeat a little bit what I call the mirroring technique, not mimicking or mocking what the patient is saying, but kind of mirroring back what they're saying. Example being, I want to make sure that I have this correctly. So just to make sure I understand, you stated your hours were cut at work and you're just not able to make the payment this month. Is that correct? Okay, well, let me see what I can do about that payment. What if we cancel the payment that's due this month on March 15th, and we'll just reset up the next payment for April 15th, because that's when you're supposed to go back to work. So I like to kind of just repeat a little bit of what they're saying to show I am listening to you. I'm not just sitting there going, mm-hmm, uh-huh, okay, yep, mm-hmm. No, I'm actively listening. That's going to be key too. And understand too that doing this during this pandemic, and even as the pandemic seems to be lightening up a little bit, think about the relationships and the rapport you're building with your patients for future relationships, right? And so I think that's key too. So it's not just kind of, helping out right now, but again, that olive branch is being extended and you're building that relationship for future visits, future relationships with those patients, word of mouth. And so that's important. So think about it that way too. So O is for overcome. So how do you overcome the conversation when you're talking to the patient and it looks like you just can't get a payment, or they're calling in and they're saying, gosh, I can't. There's no way I can continue making these monthly payments. I have to cancel it. I'm so sorry. What do you do? What can you do to help overcome that? Or maybe even try to get a partial payment versus maybe, the larger payment that they're making. So rule of thumb, obtain your FNC, your full and complete information. So what does that mean? What that means is what you should do, and what would be helpful is if anytime you're talking to the patient, you update your information, right? Update the full and complete information, making sure you still have the current address, making sure you still have all the up-to-date phone numbers. What about email? Maybe they would prefer email communication. Especially in today's environment and especially with the use of technology, a lot of our patients would just like to receive statements, emails, or text messages. And so updating all of that contact information is going to be critical to help you keep that line of communication open. But in addition to that, obtaining FNC also includes that financial summary, right? So when I say financial summary, I mean, they're calling in and they're saying, look, I know I have a check dated on file for you for the 15th. There's no way I can make that payment. I can't pay $200. I need to cancel that payment. So let's get some full and complete information. Okay, I do see that you have that payment dated for Monday the 15th. Let's see what options are available to you. Before I can see what you may qualify for, let me just update your information. Are you still at 123 Main Street? Is this still a good contact number for you? Are there any additional numbers you want to place on file? Is there an email address you would like to have on file? Or if you have one, can you confirm is your email address still XYZ? And then in addition to that, okay, so just to confirm, are you still working at State Collection Services? You're still full-time. Okay, you've been furloughed. What is your monthly income now? Kind of just start asking that financial summary. And I'm sure all of you have those type of questions already, right, in your office that you would ask to approve the patient for payment plan or to approve them for, or at least submit an application for financial assistance or charity care. And so anytime you're talking to the patient, you want to update that full and complete information. Continue to listen to their concerns, right? Those active listening skills we just talked about. You want to continue listening to them, asking them those open-ended questions, right? So you are able to keep that conversation going. Try to stay away from those yes or no questions because you're going to get yes or no answers, or you're going to start backing yourself up in the corner and you're not really going to get the information you need to be able to successfully help them. Also, be aware of your organization's temporary or revised guidelines. So I know that for me, there's, a lot of our clients have a reduction in settlement parameters. They've been able to extend payment plans. They've been able to help with looking at different ways to do maybe a reduction of a payment. So instead of $100 a month, we're going to temporarily reduce your payment to $50 a month. Or perhaps, they're going to let you just skip the payment for March and we'll resume in April. Or we're going to have to cancel the arrangement, but let's stay in touch, right? Let's stay in touch with you. Let's talk about what you can do in the near future. And you're going to kind of move forward from there. But be aware of those temporary guidelines, not only when they begin, but when they end and what those guidelines are. Make sure you stay up to date too, with respect to the pandemic, especially when you're talking about, restrictions being lifted, especially all of our patients and folks that are in the restaurant or food industry. States are starting to, release those guidelines. They're allowing places such as restaurants and things to be open back to normal hours. In Ohio, our curfew was lifted. So things like that, that's an indicator to you that your patients are going to be able to start going back to work. They're going to start going back to regular hours. And so you want to make sure you're staying up to date on what's going on with the pandemic. As far as the updated stimulus packages, things like that, tax time, all those kinds of things you want to make sure you're staying up to date on so you can assist your patients. You can help them with resolution. You can help them with the potential ideas and suggestions on ways that they can pay that they may not even been aware they could pay. So virtual collecting, that's what our V stands for. So virtual collecting, virtual conversations. How or what do I do to stay focused and to stay motivated? And I think that's important. So think about this as yourself, but also with your patients, because I know quite a few folks that really had a hard time with that transition, meaning they really struggled with moving from working in an office environment to working remote. I'm a people person. I love to talk to people. I love to see people. I love to be around people. And so this last year has been a little bit of a challenge for me because I haven't traveled in over a year for work, and, Ohio shut down for a few months. And so we are kind of restricted to what we can do, and that's challenging. And so think about that also from the patient's perspective. If you're calling somebody that, is working remote and they're having a hard time transitioning, using those active listening skills again to kind of help them through that. You need to keep a schedule. That's so important. So important. I know it's easy to just get up, roll out of bed, and go right to your computer. You start at 8. You're going to log in at 7:55 in your pajama pants. You brushed your teeth, and that's all you needed to do. You need to keep on that schedule. That's just going to help you to be motivated. It's going to help you to think clearer, to have as much normalcy as you possibly can when you're talking to your patients on the phone. Try to work in a quiet location. I know that's not an option for a lot of folks who, are in apartments, or, they really don't have any quiet space because the kids have their bedrooms, they're doing their schoolwork in their offices. So maybe you are sitting at the dining room table, or maybe you are like in the basement, who knows? Maybe you're working in your bedroom and you set it up on your nightstand. I don't know, but try to work in a quiet location. It's just funny because I was talking to the girls from HFMA when this call started, and it was funny to me because we still struggle with mute sometimes, right? I've been on calls even now where I'm on mute and I don't realize I'm on mute. And one of my coworkers last week did the same thing, and she said that was so last year ago, right? Everybody should know then when to take their phone off mute. And so think about that when you're talking to your patients, and think about those noises, those noise distractions, right? I don't know if you heard my dog barking a few minutes ago, but she was barking because my husband came home. But try to think about that too when you're working, being mindful of those type of distractions when you need to work in a quiet space. Keep your goals. It's still important to have goals, even when you're sitting at home. I mean, I'm a paper person. I need to write things down, or I pop open an email, and I'm not going to send an email, but I list my goals or my objectives in there because I always keep it open and I'll always look at it. But I think that that's important too, to make sure that you're keeping your goals. Again, you want to keep your mind stimulated. Don't forget to take breaks. Okay, now, I'm not saying that means you just take your unlimited breaks and do whatever you want, however long you want. That's not what I'm saying. But it is important to remember to take breaks just for your own mental stability. Again, we're working with our patients over the phone in a virtual and remote environment. Even if you don't have your camera on and you're just doing these calls remotely from your office space, keep in mind, your tone is going to come through, right? So if I just shut off my camera real quick, and now listen, so now, don't I sound different? I bet you any money I sound extremely different right now than how I did before. Do you know why? Because even though I'm not on camera, I started slouching in my chair. Just by slouching, my voice was different. And so you want to be mindful of that too when you're talking to your patients on the phone. Your own mindset is going to come across to that patient, and you're going to be able to serve them better if you take a break and if you remember to take care of your own mental stability. Go for a walk. This morning, the last 2 days, I went for a run before work started because I know that I've had the next couple of days are going to be really super busy for me all day, and I got to get in the right mindset. And so think about that. Go outside for a walk. I'll go outside and play ball with the dogs in the yard for 10 minutes on my break just to walk away. And that's very difficult for some folks to do. It's easy when you're in the office to go on break, right? Oh, hey, it's break. You got 15 minutes. It's break. Okay. Oh, and you're going to go outside with your friends and you're going to go talk for 15 minutes. You're going to run up to Starbucks, get something to drink on break. But it's very easy to get out of that habit and not remember to get up and stretch it out. So you need to do that. And be kind to yourself. That is so important, to make sure you're kind to yourself. Not only do you want to have compassion and be kind to your patients, but be kind to yourself. You're going through the same things that the patients are. So be mindful of that. Carl is saying, what strategies have you put into place to maintain the culture of your organization while the employees are remote? Teamwork, collaboration, and cooperation have been strained with everyone working remote. Carl, that is an amazing question. And I love that because I really, I work with a lot of companies in the organization, and this comes up a lot, and I've done a couple seminars on this. And I will say that our company has really put forth a huge step in making sure that we have strategies in place to help maintain our culture that we've always had, and to help them to stay motivated and feeling like they're part of something, right? And they're not on an island. And so a lot of the stuff that we've done face to face, we kind of converted virtually, right? So for example, we always have contests around like Halloween, for Halloween, for example, and we've always done, dress up your pet day and take pictures of your pet. And what we did this year is in our community SharePoint or hub, if you will, employees were encouraged and motivated to dress up your pets and send those pictures in. And then we gave virtual gift cards to the winners. We had first, second, third place winners. We've done, prior to the pandemic, we always had a visit with Santa. And we would have the president of the company would always be Santa. And there would be time slots for the employees to bring their kids in and sit down and talk to Santa and have a Santa visit. And so this year we did it virtually, where they had their specific time slot when they signed up, and they were able to sit with Santa virtually and talk to Santa. We did over the summer, we did camera day on Fridays. And so we would say, one time we did take a picture outside of what you're doing, right? What you do in the morning. And so, you know, if I'm going to go for a run, I would take a picture of myself outside getting ready to go for a run, and I would send that in. Also, we've done virtual happy hours, virgin happy hours, if you will. But we would do, instead of the shift ending at 5, we'd end the shift at 4:30, and we would have a virtual happy hour. And we would do a big Zoom or Teams meeting where we can all see each other's faces, turn your cameras on, let's talk to each other, and let's not talk about work. Let's just talk about what's going on in our lives. And, you know, I know in the beginning, not a lot of our remote staff, especially our representatives and collectors, had cameras, but over the course of the last, I don't know, 6 months or so, they all now have cameras, and we encourage, put your camera on. We want to see you. We want this to be as connected and as normal as possible. We also do a lot of gamification. We still do contests that help keep them involved and engaged. We use Teams. Microsoft, my training team, we all use Zoom, but using Teams is real big, because in Teams you can set up those individual channels. We have those individual chats, so they can be included in group chats with each other if they need help, if they have questions. So those are some really good strategies that we put in place to really help that we were able to maintain that connection. So I hope that helped. And if it didn't, please let me know, but I hope it helped. And please keep those questions or comments in that chat box. That'd be great. Thank you, Carl. All right, so let's talk about information gathering, shall we? So we talk about information gathering, and I know you're like, did we just talk about this? We did. You want to gather and update the patient information. Again, that's critical component. You want to stay in connection with your, sorry guys. You want to stay up to date with all of your documentation and all of your contact information. So as you're building that rapport and that relationship with that patient, you're always going to be able to have that avenue to get in touch with them. Again, make sure you pay attention to any new and developing pandemic updates. Stay current with your organizational updates, right? Again, those payment plans, those settlement offers, you know, any type of negotiation updates, make sure you stay current and up to date and communicate that to everybody in your team. And I have source on here because I think it's important that we remain a source of education and assistance to our patients. You know, we're in the healthcare industry. Health is important. And a lot of times we get calls where we're talking to the patient and they're expressing their healthcare concerns, or maybe they don't understand the shot schedule, right? The shot schedule, the vaccination is going out in a specific schedule based on need, as you know, the need first, right? So the priority level, if you will. And so patients are calling saying, when do I get to have my vaccination? How do I qualify? I'm in the food industry. When do I go? Don't I go before everybody else? And so we need to make sure that we're staying educated, so we are that source of solid information to help our patients when they're looking for it. When we talk about diversity is important. And when I talk about diversity, I mean diversity and the way that we're handling our accounts and the way that we're handling our patients, right? Especially when we're dealing with defaulted accounts, trying to explain the issues with their accounts. A lot of patients, especially like somebody like my mom, again, who's 74, she likes to walk in and sit down and talk to somebody. She wants to come in with her statement and have it explained to her. And so how do we adapt to that? I remember I had to help my mom on her very first virtual ever appointment last summer. And, you know, how do you have a virtual appointment with your doctor? How do you do virtual registration? And so when we talk about diversity, there's a few key points that we're going to want to talk about. And so when we talk about diversity, let's talk about forgiving past due payments, right? So, you know, I'm not saying forgive, meaning hey, Carl, thanks for calling in. You're going to build your report and you're say, well, I do see that you're past due 2 months. I'm not saying you're going to just forgive those 2 payments and write them off, and we're just going to go with the current balance moving forward, but maybe take those 2 past due payments and maybe part of your strategy, and maybe you're able to incorporate those payments into a new payment plan. So let's just renegotiate your entire payment plan based off what your current balance is today, and we're going to start off fresh, right? But what about extending that payment plan? So maybe instead of 6 months, maybe instead of 6 months, you're going to extend it 12 months. Maybe instead of 12 months, you're going to allow 18 months. Maybe there's going to be some type of special discount, right? Looking at those special discounts and different avenues of ways that you can help the patient, but still collect money on the back end. Again, skipping a payment, I'm sorry, Judy, that, it's unfortunate that you're experiencing this type of challenge and issue. Why don't I do this? Let's go ahead and don't worry about the payment that's due on March 15th. Let's just go ahead and resume your payment on April 15th, right? So kind of like putting that past due payment for this month onto the back of the arrangement, right? So looking at ways and being creative, just being really creative on how we can really continue to bring money in the door just a little bit differently, right? Looking at extensions or deferring payment plans. And what about small good faith payments? So instead of, Judy, saying, hey, I can't make that $100 payment this month. Oh, I understand what you're saying, Judy. So let me ask you this. How much would you be able to pay? What would be comfortable for you? Maybe Judy can't pay 100. Maybe she can pay 50. Maybe she can pay 60. Maybe she can pay 25. So kind of working through that and just really being creative with the type of arrangement that you need to be, that would be different than outside the pandemic, to really try to, again, keep that money in the door. Keep in mind too, that showing and acting on behalf of good faith and trying to work and help your patients is going to be a really great way to continue to build rapport with your patients. And again, you're extending that olive branch, which is then going to also extend that relationship. Some different quotes and some different things that you would be able to say to help with, maybe revising those payment arrangements. I would be happy to temporarily decrease your monthly payment plan to X. We can then reinstate your normal payment plan on this day. Does that help you? So for example, you talk to somebody who says, look, I just lost my job. I am able to start a new job, but that's not going to be until May 1st. Okay, well, I'd be happy to decrease your monthly payment, or if they're not able to because they're not going to get unemployment, or maybe they are, but it's going to be just enough to survive until they start working on May 1st. Again, renegotiating with the intent of that plan starting at a later date. The key here too, folks, is you always want to make sure you stay in contact with the patient when you're revising these arrangements or you're renegotiating. Always give your contact information, always update the contact information for the patient, but then try to set and solidify a specific day and time for a callback. Again, I know that it sounds easier than said and done, right? At times, I get it. And so sometimes it might be better for you to set a specific time and date for the patient to call you, or to at least have the callback number to your customer service center so they can talk to somebody. But again, trying to work through how to get some money versus no money. Let's set something up for 45 days from now. If you're still experiencing the hardship, just call me back and we'll see what other options might be available. Or instead of canceling your plan, let's do this. I'll not only delay your next payment, but I'll also forgive your late payment and temporarily reduce your plan for X amount of dollars over X amount of months. Again, you're going to be doing what's within your organization, criteria would be, right? But the key here is, at least in my experience, especially over the last year or so, is the more that we were working with the patients and relaxing some of the parameters and really working with them based on their unique and individual situations, it was very surprising to me how many patients continued to call back, even would call back sooner and say, hey, I was able to take out a 401k and I'm going to pay this balance because you guys were so kind to work with me. Or, you know what, I didn't need to skip my payment. I'm actually able to make my payment. I was able to go back to work. My 4-load didn't last as long as I thought it was. So you'd really be surprised at how thankful and grateful the patients have been due to being able to have a little bit of compassion and relaxation and the understanding with respect to their healthcare bills. So when we continue to talk about diversity, don't forget that there's additional financial assistance consideration, right? And so this is probably a very critical time too, that you're going to want to really look at your charity care policies and your financial assistance, right? So looking at what your current policies are and seeing if maybe that patient does qualify. Maybe it does just mean, yeah, you see that they were offered a self-pay discount, but maybe you're going to offer another additional discount because of their situation. But maybe now is the time too that you really want to take a little bit more extra cautionary measures to look and see if they qualify for charity, look and see if they qualify for financial assistance. And you know what? Maybe they don't. Maybe at the end of the day, you did do all of that, and you know what? They still don't qualify. But the fact of the matter remains that you took the time to suggest it, to talk through it, and to try to offer it to them, but they didn't qualify. That in itself is you extending that olive branch, and to the patient, you did go a little bit above and beyond to try to find alternative measures and other ways that their bill might be able to be satisfied, that normally they were never offered that before. And so I think that that's important to always make sure you look for these other types of avenues for the patient. So one patient at a time, right? I'm going to tell you what, one patient at a time, it really surprises the patients when you really take a step back and really focus on how you can help them by listening and looking at all the different avenues and alternatives you can have to try to help them. Try to stay reachable. Again, I know that's easier said than done, folks. I don't have the magic wand that gives you more time in the day or more staff, right? I wish. But you want to stay reachable, even if that means you're giving your contact information. Maybe it's reference. How about this? And we're going to talk about this here when we talk about digital channels. What about my chart? What about any other type of electronic ways that you can communicate? So I can tell you that one of my friends is in the healthcare industry, and what they recently did is she used to be on the call center side of it. So she used to be on inbound calls all day, and she would just field inbound calls. And what they just recently implemented at the beginning of January was she is now managing all the MyChart correspondence. So as the patients go through their MyChart and they're either sending questions through their MyChart, or they're like via email, things like that. Maybe they're asking a question, they want a detailed bill, they want an itemized statement, whatever. Or they want to talk about a payment plan. She is the one that is sitting there and she's responding to all of these MyChart questions. She's there for live chat. And so that's a good way to also incorporate that MyChart or that electronic communication when we were talking about earlier, updating email addresses, things like that. And so for your customer service reps that are on the front line, registration, all of those folks that are working and talking to the patients in the very beginning, how about they ask, would you like access to your MyChart? Let's get you signed up for MyChart. I know some clients have automatically started automatic enrollment into MyChart. So they do start getting their statements electronically, and they do start opening up that line of electronic communication. And it's done a lot of wonders for my friend and the organization to be able to field calls better, to be able to handle that influx in volume, and to be able to follow up with the patients more personally. So that's another way that you can really try to adapt and change and help with these patients one at a time. And I'm going to tell you, we have really heard a lot of thank yous over the last 12 months, just by the way that we have had that compassion and the diversity and payment plans and arrangements and things like that. And you know what? Look, I'm from State Collection Service, right? We're a collection agency, and we do early out services. So understand that it's not us that are relaxing these parameters. It's all of you out there. It's all of you that are already looking at these types of ways to really help your patients during the pandemic, and we're extending that offer out there. And you'd be surprised at how many come back and just say, thank you so much for working with us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being there. And like I said, we've had a lot of patients come back and actually pay the full balance or realize they don't really need to skip a payment anymore. And so I think that that's something that you all want to keep in mind. When you are working through these different diversity terms, opening up the charity assistance and financial care type of applications and questioning, it's really going a long way. Helping provide pragmatic help. And so, okay, Beth, what does pragmatic mean? That's a big word. It is, I know. But helping them that are in financial stress. So what does pragmatic mean? You want to help them find realistic and sensible solutions, right? So again, you may be talking to somebody who is in the food industry, and they're not going to be able to pay $50 a month, but they can do 25. And so helping them with those sensible solutions and helping them understand that you're there to help them through this financial distress that they're experiencing. And again, just a reminder that charity care and that financial assistance is still there. So what's next? Now, we have about 9 minutes left. Wow, that was a fast hour, folks. I hope I kept you all awake. So 9 ways to adapt. So I've provided on the next 2 slides some great sentences or rebuttals or statements that you can make that have really helped to build that rapport with the patient and really help get an account back on track. So what are 9 ways to adapt, or what are 9 good things you can say when your patient starts talking about the pandemic, which I'm probably sure is quite often. So how about we understand, and we're happy to work with you during this time, this difficult time for all of us. Let me ask you some questions. See, let me, or let me, we're in it together, right? Let me ask you a few questions just so I can get a clear picture of your situation. Then I can work with you to see what you qualify for or what arrangements are going to be available to you. Our payment options have changed in response to this pandemic, so we understand. We have quite a different criteria now. So let me see what options are available to you, and let's talk through those. And now understand too, when you're talking about these different types of statements and saying to the patients, let me see what options are available to you, and let's talk through those. Of course, you're going to want to start at the highest one first, right? So if you're able to negotiate, a settlement, or maybe a down payment in payments, or small monthly payments, or a good faith payment, don't start at the lowest bracket, right? We want to start up high and work low, because we're all human. And if you're telling me I can pay $25 a month, I'm going to take $25 a month, even if I could pay 50 or 75. So you want to be strategic about it. And again, here's one, we're all in this together. I understand how you feel. I spoke to a patient yesterday who felt the same way, and this is what we found. So again, that feel, felt, found method is really helpful. Our organization is trying to do our part to help patients during this crisis. That's a fantastic way to, again, open that line of conversation. Open that line of conversation. And again, you're empathetic. You're letting them know we're human too. We understand. And this is what we're doing to help. This is what we're doing in our part to make things as easy for everybody as possible. And even just something as simple as, I know it's crazy, right? I couldn't even find toilet paper, or, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Did nobody ever clean before the pandemic? Why are there no Clorox wipes anywhere? Just having those simple, little funny, but realistic comments and statements it calms us down, right? And it makes it more realistic. Let's see how I can help you until this craziness is under control. We don't normally do this. However, under the circumstances, I'm going to help you. And this is what I can do. Don't worry. I want you to calm down. Please don't worry. We're going to work with you through this pandemic. Those are great ways to calm the anxiety down and be able to help work through with the patient a way to get that account resolved. And just some follow-up reminders. So remember, be kind, empathetic, and understanding. But you know what? Be kind to yourself. You're in the same boat as well. So be kind to yourself, be kind to the patient. It's a conversation. We're all in this together. Let patients know you're going through this together and work with them. Gather as much information as you can to help make a really good decision and the best possible solution for your patient that you can. I'm telling you, it'll go a long way. Years from now, your patients will remember that, especially when they have to choose what facility to go to. They're going to remember that. It's that landline again. Always remember, and I just put this in there as a compliance piece, never threaten or say things that are not going to happen or that is going to cause the call to escalate, of course, right? And don't leave those open ends hanging at all. Open ends, what I mean is, if you are talking to somebody and, they're like, you say, you know what, Terry, just so you know, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get you the answer you're looking for. I'm going to need to take this away. Do you mind holding for a minute or two? And Terry says, look, I can't hold. I got to go. I cannot hold. Okay. Is this a good number to call you back at? I'm going to go ahead and get the information and I'll give you a call back by 4 o'clock today. Don't say in a few minutes. Give yourself some time. It's 4 o'clock here in Ohio. You know what? What's a good number to reach you at? I'll give you a call within 24 hours. If you don't hear from me, please call me back and here's my direct contact information. Don't leave those loose ends hanging. Even, like I said earlier in the presentation, even if you don't necessarily have the answer within 24 hours, there's nothing wrong with, if you have the time, to call back and say, I just want you to know, Terry, I haven't forgotten about this. I'm still waiting on the answer, but I wanted to touch base and just let you know. All right, so I think that brings us right up to the top of the hour. I believe we have 4 minutes left. Any other questions, comments, concerns that I can help any of you with in the chat box? I had one question and I answered it, so I hope that was helpful. Without further ado then, I'll keep monitoring the chat box for another 2 minutes or so. But without further ado, again, I just want to thank all of you so much for spending an hour with me today. I really hope that you were able to get some good takeaways and I was able to help you. If there are any other questions, comments, concerns, again, please just let me know. And I will turn it back over to our HFMA team to go ahead and close us out. And thank you again. And you're welcome, Kim. Thank you all so much.
Great, thank you, Beth. That was some great examples of what we can do to help support our patients. And as you said, build those relationships because those will be long lasting for us in the future. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming and joining us here today for a great presentation by Beth from State Collection. And I wanted to thank our sponsors because without them, we couldn't do this. We have our platinum sponsors for our San Diego chapter of Novus and CloudMed, our gold sponsors of Extend, Argos, IC System, and NableComp, our silver Centralia law offices of Stephan Acquisto and Coleman, CBB, Golden State Advocates, Guidehouse, CMRE, PMS, the San Diego Extension, Asperion, Convergent, RevCore, and Haas Group, and our bronze sponsors, Avidine Health and Sirius. Again, it was nice to have you all join us here today, and we hope to see you at our next regional webinar.